This video is sponsored by Squarespace. So the very first thing that I do when I get a brand new drone is dive into the settings and change them to my liking. DJI's extensive options within the Fly Companion app really let you take control of how your drone flies, how the camera shoots, and what actions it will take during autonomous modes. There's of course a ton of safety features that you can change as well, but there is one group of settings that I think is by far the most important to change, and if you haven't dug through the menus, you probably missed or glanced right over it. The settings that I'm referring to are the Gain and Expo Settings, which changes how your drone reacts to your stick input on your controller, which is actually a relatively newer feature introduced to DJI's entire current drone lineup. Fun fact and a quick history lesson, DJI's older drones that ran on the Go companion app, so their Phantom series, the Mavic Pro, the Spark, the Mavic Air, all those older drones had the ability to change the Gain and Expo settings to a certain extent, but once we migrated over to the new Fly Companion application, that stripped down application didn't have these settings anywhere to be found. Now with all of DJI's current drones that make up their lineup, from the Mini 4 Pro to the Air 3 to the Mavic 3 series and even stretching into their enterprise lineup, have these settings available for full customization. Now for those of you that are watching in the future where these drones might be irrelevant, maybe we're on a Mavic 4, maybe we're on a Mini 5, maybe DJI has come out with their M400 or their Mavic 4 Enterprise, just know that these features have stayed very similar from even the very early Phantom drones, so this is probably going to be a very similar feature moving forward, and this video is still going to apply to you. Okay, so getting into it, here's a big issue that I see when people are flying their drone. The shots aren't smooth. For me, I pride myself on smooth drone and gimbal movements to help tell my story. Any small bump or erratic movement can completely kill a shot for me, making it unusable. That's why when I see these shots online that have these really abrupt movements, it hurts me inside. Now there are a few components to getting good shots with your drone as a whole, and the first and foremost is experience and skill. How much time have you spent on the sticks to learn how your drone moves, and how much do you know about composition to actually get a good looking shot with your drone? That is a huge factor, but no matter what your skill level is, changing your Gain and Expo settings to be exactly how you want so the drone moves in a way that's comfortable to you is going to make a huge difference no matter what your skill level is. With that said, how about we jump into our controller here to cover all of these different options within the Gain and Expo settings section. So we'll first tap on the three dots in the top right corner, and then we'll select the control section, and upon scrolling down, we'll see here our Gain and Expo settings section. So starting up at the top here, you can choose which flight mode you're adjusting the settings for, so you can have a different feel in the Cine, Normal, and Sport mode. In each of these sections, you have the ability to change the maximum horizontal speed, ascent speed, and descent speed, as well as the maximum angular velocity, the yaw smoothness, the braking sensitivity, and the general expo settings. At the very bottom, you also have the option to adjust the speed and smoothness of your gimbal pitch, so you can fine tune how that responds to your input on that back wheel. So there's a good amount to go through here. I want to cover all of the different settings. I want to show you their effect on the drone as you move the slider up and down, and I want to show you what my settings are and how I'm able to get nice smooth shots with my drones. But first, here's a quick word from this video sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is my all-in-one tool to share and manage my content. The layout that I've chosen gives me the ability to share my videos, photos, and general information with my audience on my own terms, so I get to choose how it's displayed. After choosing from one of their many templates, I was able to fully customize the experience quickly and efficiently with the new Fluid engine that makes building out your website a breeze. All the elements that Squarespace offers gives me so many different options to feature the images and content on my web pages. This also makes my website easy to maintain over time, so I can spend less time updating my website and more time creating. Squarespace also offers flexible payment options to users that decide they want to sell goods through their website. In my case, it would be prints, presets, or anything else photography related. To keep on top of how my website is performing, Squarespace's analytics go in depth so that I can see how much traffic my website is getting, what area of my website is being viewed the most, and I can see which web pages and which content is performing the best. So a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video and helping me display my work online for over half a decade. Okay, so I figured a change in scenery was in order for this second half of the video, so we could get outside and get the drone in the air so that you could see exactly how these changes to these settings are going to affect the flight of the drone. Now I've got my Mavic 3 Pro sitting just across the road above the landfill over there, and we're going to go through what my settings are, and then I'm going to show you how these different changes can affect the flight of the drone. Now I do just want to preface this by saying my settings are not the end all be all. You could go and try my my settings and say, wow, this drone is way too slow, it doesn't move fast enough, and you might need to tweak it for maybe specific jobs that you're going to be on. So don't worry, this is not going to be me telling you exactly what the best settings are. Instead, I'm going to show you how the changes affect the behavior of the drone so that you can make your own decision to take it outside and really tune it exactly to how you'd like it to fly. So within our main flight screen here, we'll tap on the 3 dots in the top right corner, and then under the control section, we'll go to our Gain and Expo tuning. Now remember, we've got 3 different flight modes: Cine, Normal, and Sport, and amongst all those different flight modes, we can actually make changes to all of the different settings. We already went over this in the beginning of the video. Now personally, I really don't use the Cine mode all that often. I find myself needing to fly faster than what the Cine mode would offer. You could actually use the Cine mode as just another flight mode. So you could say, use the same exact settings between Cine and Normal, but say maybe just increase the tilt pitch speed of the gimbal. So you could have the same flight parameters between both of them, but maybe it moves a little faster on Normal and moves a little bit slower on Cine. That is one option. I know for me, when I'm trying to move around and I use a slow gimbal pitch, it's really difficult to just sit there and wait for the gimbal to look all the way down. That can be annoying. For me, I don't use the Cine mode though. All of these settings are basically just set to be exactly how they were right out of the box. So I'm not going to show you my settings in there because I obviously don't change them. Now for Normal, I have my max horizontal speed set all the way to the maximum of 33.6 miles per hour. Now this isn't the maximum speed of the drone, but instead it's the maximum speed the drone can fly while still using its obstacle avoidance sensor. So I've got that cranked all the way up. I've also got my ascent speed cranked all the way up and my descent speed cranked all the way up as well. I've got my max angular velocity set to 50 degrees per second, my yaw smoothness set to 20, my brake sensitivity set to 100. I've got 0.25 for my up and down expo. I've got 0.2 for my yaw expo, and then 0.25 for my pitch and roll expo. Next, my max control tilt speed for my gimbal is 10 degrees per second, and my tilt smoothness is 20. Now, if you go over and look at the sport mode, it's very similar to Normal. So I've got the max horizontal speed cranked all the way up, the max ascent and descent speed cranked all the way up. I've got the same max angular velocity, the same yaw smoothness, the same brake sensitivity. Really, the only difference I've changed here is my expo settings. So now it's 0.3, 0.25, 0.35, and then moving down, my gimbal pitch is also just a little bit faster. So it's 5 degrees faster than what it is in the Normal section or the Normal flight mode. So why don't we jump back over to Normal and we'll kind of run down the list and show you exactly what all these different changes do. Now for the max horizontal speed, it should be pretty self-explanatory. This is the maximum speed that you want your drone to hit. So for example, we have it set to 33.6. So right now, if I go and if I push my drone forwards and we look at the bottom, we're going to get close to the top speed. Of course, there's going to be some factors like wind and whatnot. We're getting about 32 miles an hour. So of course, the drone is working as hard as it possibly can to go as fast as it possibly can while also utilizing the obstacle avoidance sensors. Now, if we go here and if we change our max horizontal speed, let's say to 2.2, now if I push forwards, I'm pushing forwards as hard as I can, as far as I can on my stick, you'll notice its maximum speed is only going to go up to 2.2 miles per hour. So again, I am fully pinned here on the stick and it is not going anywhere. So for me, I'm always going to want to make use of the full speed of my drone at one point or the other. So I've got all of the speeds set to the fastest that they can go. Now moving down, the max angular velocity is how quickly the drone is going to spin around from left to right. So right now I've got it set right in the middle at 50 degrees per second. So if I sit here and if I yaw my drone to the left, it's going to turn at 50 degrees per second as I spin, right? Now, if we go here back into the settings and change our max angular velocity, let's say all the way up to 90 degrees per second, now look at how fast it's spinning, way faster than it was. Now from here, I can go and I can actually adjust this all the way down to say 20 degrees per second. And now fully pitching or fully yawing the drone to the left, it's not moving that fast at all. Now for me, again, I keep this in the middle because as I'm say doing an orbit shot, like let's say this, if we spin around over here to the left, this equipment up here, or let's say like this pile of stuff here, if I wanted to orbit this from left to right, or yeah, from left to right, you'll notice that I want to make sure that my yaw as I move to the right is nice and smooth so that I don't have any jerky movements. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I hate jerky movements. Now to me, 20 degrees per second is way too slow. So let's go ahead, we'll jump back in here and switch this to 50 degrees per second. And now if I wanted to do the same exact orbit shot, I'll go and I'll start spinning to the right, moving to the left. And now this is exactly what I'm usually used to. So this is something that really does have a big effect on how quote unquote smooth your video is, because if we, let's say, had this cranked all the way up to 90 and we tried to go and do an orbit, you'll already see that as I'm going, I might outpace myself and overrun myself. Like, see, I'm moving way too fast now. I'm orbiting way too fast because I'm not able to keep the actual subject, which is all those piles, in the middle of my frame. So again, 50 degrees per second is a sweet spot right in the middle. It still gives me the agility to move my drone fast from left to right, to get from spot to spot, but also to give me a nice smooth movement in the yaw. Okay, next up is our yaw smoothness. So it still is going to affect the actual spinning of the drone in place. Now I've got it set to 20, right? So as you'll notice, if I go and start spinning, right, and then if I let my finger off the stick, it is still going to spin and actually come to a slow break because I have it set to be a little bit more smooth. Now, if I jump in here, let's say we pump this all the way up to 100, notice how as I begin to move, it takes forever. It's like a slug to get up to its maximum speed. And then I'm gonna go and stop holding the stick, and look, it's still spinning, still going. So that means that it is as smooth as possible when it goes and actually comes to a stop. Now this is good because if you kind of lean off the stick just a little bit, it's going to help you smooth into your movement and give you the smoothest video possible. But personally, I just couldn't stand having to deal with something that is that slow. Like, go ahead, we'll start spinning. It takes forever to get up to its maximum speed. We can let go, and now it's just going to continue to spin. Like, personally, I almost think it's dangerous to fly like this because you almost don't have complete control over the drone. But we'll jump in there. We'll go, let's say, down to 0. Now, if I go and start spinning, it's like instantaneous. If I go and stop spinning, it comes to an instant stop, right? And this could be good for, say, search and rescue if you're trying to look around and you want the, I guess, most responsive drone possible. Sure, this would be great, but for my sake, when I'm trying to do some filming, when I'm trying to get the smoothest shot possible, 20 is what I found to be very good because, again, it gives you a nice ease into the movement if you go and start moving your stick from left to right, but also if you want to stop, you can actually just kind of come to a stop and it slowly eases into that stop. So 20 is about my value that I find to be perfect. Now the brake sensitivity, it's 100 right out of the gate. I would be wary of adjusting this, especially if you're used to the brake sensitivity, because if you're in a tight area and you let go of the stick, the drone might take forever to come to a stop. So for example, at 100 right now, it's going to give you a nice braking distance. So if I start to fly forwards here, and if I come to a stop, it's going to slowly come to a stop, right? And it's fairly average based on what I'd expect from a drone. But if we go and if we bump this all the way up to 150, it's now going to give us a shorter braking distance. So if I go and if I start flying and we look at the speed down below, if I go and if I stop, it is going to halt to an immediate stop. Right? So that was a lot faster than when I had it on 100. Now, if we go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, all the way down to say 10, and let's say we'll fly backwards just so we don't get it too far away from us now. So we're flying backwards. It's going to ease us up to our top speed. If we now go and let go of this stick, look, it is still flying. It's still flying. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. It's still moving. So could you imagine using that slow of a brake sensitivity in a situation where you're trying to land amongst a bunch of trees? You could bring it in, let's say a little bit quick. You could let go of the stick and the drone might continue to drift into a tree or an obstacle, which again could be dangerous. So again, I think having your settings as smooth as possible is definitely important, but you don't want to make them too smooth to where it's dangerous to fly. So 100 for me is perfect. I don't need the drone taking a full 10 seconds to come to an exact stop. So 100, okay, perfect. Now Expo settings. These are a little bit difficult to explain because the graph might be kind of contradictory of the values on the right side. You might be trying to figure out how this works. And you can think of the x-axis as kind of like your input on the stick and the y-axis as to how much power the drone is going to output. So for example, here, my x-axis, as I move the stick just a little bit, it's going to provide barely any power, right? But as I start to push more and more on the stick, it's going to deliver that curve of power. So for example, if I go to my yaw settings and adjust this all the way to 0.9. Look at how that adjusted to the graph. So now if I move my stick just a little bit, it's going to give it so much power. So if I can kind of show you here, as I start to push forwards, if I just start to gently push forward on the stick. Oh, what did I adjust here? I adjusted the yaw. Okay, so that's going to be how I spin the drone left to right. So if I go and if I give it just a little bit of yaw, look, it's already spinning super fast and I'm barely touching on the stick. But if I were to say go and adjust this to the opposite way, if I bring my yaw all the way down to 0.1, now if I adjust if I move my stick just a little bit, it's barely applying any speed whatsoever, because I really need to push down on the stick for me to actually reach the full speed of my yaw. And that can be changed for a bunch of different settings, right? So for your up and down movement, so that's your altitude, then your pitch and your roll, so that's how you actually like move the drone from left, right, forward, backwards, and then your yaw is how the drone spins in place. So I had this on 0.2. Again, these are basically stock, how it comes directly out of the box. I'd recommend maybe playing around with this. It could give you a good, I guess, change as to how your drone is going to react when you actually use the stick movements. But be careful, because if you end up, again, pumping these numbers all the way up, the drone is going to take right off as soon as you give it just a little bit of pressure on the stick. So just be wary of that. Now, finally, we have our gimbal speed, our tilt, and our tilt smoothness. So right now, I've got it set to 10 degrees. So if I go and if I give it the full speed, that is how fast it is going to move. It's moving 10 degrees per second. Now, to me, this is perfect for when I'm filming, when I'm flying, because I can slowly maneuver the gimbal up and down as I need to. It can be annoying when I want to look straight down, but that's why I have my custom button to shoot straight down. Gives me the ability to look up, look down quickly, and then also I can slowly move my gimbal up and down. Now, if we were to say adjust this to 100 degrees per second, now look at how quick this moves up and down. This is going to be impossible to get any sort of silky smooth cinematic shot with. So I would take this and I would lower this down to, again, what I had it at, 10 degrees per second. If you go down to 0, that's going to take you forever to move the gimbal, or sorry, not 0, what's the lowest? 1 degree per second. It's going to take you forever to actually get the gimbal to look downwards. You think about it, a 90 degree pitch looking down, it's going to take you 90 seconds, right? 1 degree per second. So it's going to take way too long. Now, the tilt smoothness is also going to dampen the speed of your tilt up and down as you move it. So I have it set to 20, but if I were to go to 30 and start to move, it's not going to pick up to its full speed until a little bit. And then I go, and if I let go, it's not going to continue to come to that slow speed. So I'm increasing the amount of time it takes to start and stop and get up to its full speed. Now, if I go and if I instead go to 0, there's now no dampening on me going from putting input on the gimbal to it reaching its maximum speed, right? It's actually just going to start and pick right up as soon as you start to apply any sort of movement, and it's going to also stop as soon as you let go. So in order to give me a little bit of room there, I go and I pump this up to 20. And yeah, those are the settings that I use, and that is how you change, or what the effects of each of these changes will have on your drone. Now again, I use the same exact settings for my sport mode, the maximum speed, the same maximum angular velocity, yaw smoothness, brake sensitivity. I do change my Gain Expo settings just a little bit to kind of deal with the faster speed of the drone. And then finally, my tilt speed for the gimbal is 15 degrees per second. Okay. I don't want to hear this continue to beep. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know down in the comment section if you have any questions whatsoever about these settings. I know it can be a little bit difficult, but I think the biggest thing, the most helpful thing to do is to get outside and just practice for yourself with these settings and figure out what works the best. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.